Subject to my presentation today is digital trust in action. And I guess probably a good thing to do is to start with how do we define digital trust? Because clearly it's quite a broad subject. So I thought I'd start off with just asking a couple of questions. Oh, it is working. Right, so some of the questions I've got. Actually, this is going to be quite challenging because I thought I'd actually have my notes on the screen here, but I don't. So, I'm going to have to wing it a little bit here. So, a couple of challenges that I would kind of lay down. So, for example, whenever you go to your bank's website, how do you know that the bank's website that you go to is actually that website and is not somebody else imitating that website? When you get an upgrade on your iPhone, how do you know that upgrade's actually come from Apple? If you were to be unfortunate enough to be in hospital and you're being treated with some key medical equipment, sensitive medical equipment, how do you know that in some way that's not been tampered with? Or if you were to send a message via WhatsApp, how do you know that that's been encrypted? All of these are challenges of digital trust. And at DigiCert, we believe that we're the world's leader in digital trust solutions. So how do we do it? Well, I'm guessing that not many of you need an introduction to digital certificates and PKI. Well, we believe that we're the world's leading provider of those solutions. And it's interesting because our CEO often talks about PKI as being like the water and the electricity of security. It's one of those things that you take for granted until it's not there, and then you realize how important it is. And it's interesting because PKI is certainly undergoing something of a renaissance over recent years. The number of digital trust use cases that it solves are increasing rapidly. So, for today's session, for the next 17 minutes and 35 seconds, what I'm going to try and do is just answer and highlight 3 or 4 of the key challenges that we see in digital trust at the moment, and spoiler alert, how DigiCert might help you to be able to solve some of those solutions. So, before I talk about that, I will just quickly say that this is not just me, this is not just DigiCert that's telling you what a great solution PKI is and how it helps digital trust. Luminaries like IDC and Gartner are also now backing PKI as being the go-to way of solving digital trust challenges. So let's dive into some of these things, and I'll just build this slide. So, challenge number 1. PKI is rapidly becoming more and more complex for a number of reasons. The first of those reasons is an issue that affects all of us today in security, is that data lives in so many more places than it ever did before. It's so much more complex. Data is no longer just an on-prem solution. It's in cloud. It's in a hybrid state, it's on-premise as well. All of those things lead to complexity, and they have an impact on PKI, just as they do with any other security solution. But perhaps more than that, really what we're seeing is a trend towards machine identities. And machine identities, at a conservative estimate, now outweigh user identities by about 50 to 1. So, and PKI is generally seen as being the go-to way for securing those connected devices. Furthermore, we'll see this trend increasing. And the reason we'll see that is you'll start to see AI agents proliferating through the enterprise. The challenges of securing endpoints and IoT endpoints can be overlaid onto AI endpoints as well. So you're going to see an increasing amount of complexity in the PKI landscape. So that's challenge number 1. I'll talk a little bit about how we can solve that later. Challenge number 2. Outages from expired certificates. I'm not going to embarrass anybody by asking them to raise their hand and to say who's had an outage with an expired certificate here. But if you have, unfortunately, fortunately, you're in good company. The organizations that you're seeing on the screen behind me now are not immature organizations with limited IT funds. These organizations here are mature with high-level, mature IT security infrastructures, but they're still seeing downtime causing their organizations millions of dollars as a consequence of something as simple as an expired certificate. And perhaps the best example of this, many of you would have seen this in the news, This is the delay of a SpaceX rocket caused by something as simple as an expired certificate. And this really is something worth just dwelling on for a second. Probably a $200 certificate expiring costs an organization tens of millions of dollars in a delayed rocket launch. Worth thinking about. And this problem's only going to get worse. I'm sure many of you in this room today are familiar with the recent announcement from the CA Browser Forum, the organization that makes policy for CAs and browsers, that they're going to be reducing the maximum lifespan of a TLS public certificate from a maximum of essentially 1 year all the way down to 47 days. And that's worth thinking about for a while. Because if we're seeing the sort of outages that we've just talked about there, when certificates can be used for up to a year, imagine the problem there's going to be if that time frame is reduced to 47 days. It makes the issue 8 times worse. So, again, I won't embarrass anybody, ask them to put their hands up, but we've done a survey in our organization in a number of events that we had. Those events were attended by large enterprise government organizations. Of those businesses, more than 60% of them said they were still using manual methods to manage their certificates, spreadsheets and the like. My contention for you is, right now, that's causing the sort of problems that we saw earlier on. When that problem gets 8 times worse, and even worse when we start seeing the proliferation of certificates around, as I say, other digital endpoints and AI agents, this situation is going to get worse and worse. So my contention to you is manual administration, manual management of certificates is no longer an option. It is going to be absolutely vital to actually have an automated solution for those certificates. So that's one of the first things. If I was going to leave you with one thought, it would be to go back to your organizations and understand how you're managing your certificates currently. And if the answer to that is manual, let's have a conversation. Here's the next challenge. I would say over the past 12 months, I've been asked more about quantum computing and its impact on security and digital trust than any other subject. And it's really quite an exciting development, I think, for the world, because barely a month goes by without a Google or a Microsoft or an Amazon making an announcement about the latest, greatest, hairy-chested chip that they've got for quantum that's going to increase the number of qubits, is going to reduce the error rates, all of the things that are tremendously exciting for organizations and for the world in general, because the benefits are clearly a power for good. So there's, the ability to have unprecedented computing power has all sorts of benefits. Whether it's drug discovery, whether it's climate modeling, supply chain, logistics, whatever it happens to be, there will definitely be huge advantages for the world. However, as always, where there's a benefit, sometimes there's a drawback. And I'm sure many of you will be aware that one drawback is when you have massive computational power, that does cause some issues. And the issues are very clear when it comes to security. Because as I'm sure many of you will be aware, classic encryption algorithms, such as RSA, everybody knows how to crack them. There's no mystery about it. It's simply a question of mathematics. Fortunately, the classical generation of computers just haven't been powerful enough to solve those math problems. Quantum computers completely change that. They can render something that would have taken years previously to be able to trivially do that calculation in a very short period of time. And that's the danger that we have from quantum computing. The good news is that the industry is already responding. So you're not alone when it comes to this. So many of you will be familiar that NIST have already released a number of approved algorithms that are now quantum safe, and those are now being integrated into many solutions. So that's the positive news. But the other thing that I would say to you, and again, my second takeaway for everybody in the room today, would quite simply be, you can't rely on the industry to deliver this for you. There's an obligation on every organization to make sure that they build the relevant level of cryptographic agility within their business to adapt to these changes. And the reason being is that this is not scaremongering by the likes of me, who you could argue is trying to sell something. If we look at even Gartner have come out and they've put their stake in the ground and they've said that they believe there will be a quantum computer powerful enough to be able to render the existing generation of cryptography ineffective by 2029, 4 years away. That's an incredibly short period of time. So, and by way of comparison, we can look at probably the closest comparative that we have, which is the change from SHA-1 to SHA-2, something that wasn't nearly as heavy a lift as this. And that took 10 years. So the point of this is really simple, which is we need to act now, organizations need to act now, the industry does need to act now, and it is acting now, which is great. So the security industry is your friend and your ally in this process. They're already building crypto-safe algorithms and quantum-safe algorithms into some of the solutions they have. And again, spoiler alert, DigiCert are also doing that. So our solutions, our DigiCert One platform, which I'll touch on shortly, already has those NIST-approved algorithms already embedded into it. So we're already getting ahead of it. But there is also a challenge for every organization to respond to this. And the final challenge that I wanted to talk about is really around the point of one size doesn't fit all. So PKI is an interesting field for anyone that spends some time to understand it. Because historically, there's really been two types of PKI. You've got the public side of things, which was really designed for web security, and that has some key advantages. It's standard-based, it's incredibly secure, it has interoperability built into it, all the things that are incredibly useful to us. The alternative to that would typically be private PKI. Now, private PKI, again, doesn't have some of those advantages in terms of being standards-based, in terms of having some of the compliances, but it does give a degree of flexibility. And that is something that's becoming more and more important. But what we're increasingly finding is that many industries and many organizations are looking for something that's a hybrid of those two things. You get the compliance and you get the security and the interoperability of public, but then you combine that with the flexibility of private. And we're starting to see those PKIs emerging. So for example, some of you may be familiar with Matter. Matter's a PKI particularly created for IoT. And again, it's something that DigiCert has been very heavily involved in. The other one that you may be familiar with, which again, there's been a fair bit of noise around this, is the EV PKI, which again has been specifically developed for the purposes of people who are building EV charging networks. So again, it's specifically catered towards specific industry needs. But the one I think that's probably most mature, and the one I think is probably most relevant for many people in this room today, is the X9 PKI. And the X9 PKI was one that was created specifically for the use cases of the finance industry. Now, it's not restricted only to the finance industry, but I'll tell you in a little bit why it's specifically relevant and particularly important to that use case. But again, another ask for you. Anybody who's in the financial services industry, I would recommend you do one of two things. Either take the opportunity to come to our booth and have a more detailed conversation, or when you get the chance, go back and Google X9 PKI, because I think you'll probably see some elements of that that may well ring true for you. So, why am I talking about this now? Because X9 PKI is something that has just been launched, but it's particularly important because there's another key industry development, which I think may be relevant to many people. So, some of you might be aware, we're getting into some quite technical detail at the moment, but as I said before, public TLS was invented really for the initial reason of web trust. But it's evolved over time as organizations have started to find new use cases for PKI. And as a consequence, it's really started to go beyond what its initial use case was. And as a consequence, there are many that believe that that should be stopped. And Chrome have really put a stake in the ground and said, we don't believe that TLS certificates should be dual use. And what that means is should be able to authenticate servers and also clients. They've restricted it purely to servers. The challenge for that is there are many organizations around the world who are using both of those pieces of functionality. And what they want is, again, they want the compliance, they want all of the interoperability that you'll get from using public TLS, but they also want the flexibility of private. And it was either one or the other in the past. The X9 PKI allows you to get a hybrid and a blend of those two things, which is exactly what a lot of organizations are looking for. So again, an ask for you, go back inside your organizations and ask, and I guarantee you this will be the case, that you'll be using TLS certificates that are dual use, both for authenticating servers and for authenticating clients. If that is the case, by June of 2016, those certs will no longer be trusted. You will need to find another solution. So I'd urge you to ask that question and then look at what the alternatives are. Many people will tell you, well, in that case, you need to go to private. I would say it's worth looking at X9 PKI to see if that's a solution. And again, as I say, we can talk some more about it a little bit later at our stand, if you get the chance. So, how can we help? And who are we? So, this is our DigiCert 1 platform. So many of you will know DigiCert as being the world's leading provider of public trust. And that is very much what we're incredibly proud of. But we're so much more than that. And this is the platform that we have that solves a number of different needs for our customers. And I'll give you a very quick whistle-stop tour of these particular modules. But the overriding message that we've got here is that all of these use a single pane of glass, and they're all integrated under a single solution banner. So, first of all is Trust Lifecycle Manager. That includes public trust, so TLS. It includes private trust, private PKI, and it also includes certificate lifecycle management. So go back to my previous point, which is it is going to be an absolute must to have automated certificate management. CLM is exactly that solution, and that's something that we have integrated into DigiCert 1. So if that's a requirement that you have, if you're looking for a solution to automation, which I'd suggest that most of you should, please do come and talk to us. The next model there, software trust. Again, this is a way of assuring that the software that you're issuing is digitally signed, it has the integrity that you need it to have, but also gives the ability to be able to vulnerability scan that software as well. Device Trust Manager. This solves the problem that I talked about earlier in the presentation about the proliferation of machine endpoints. Device Trust Manager allows you to insert certificates onto devices at birth and be able to secure those certificates moving forward to make sure that it is the device that you want it to be. It has only the functionality that you want it to have. And then, of course, if you absolutely need to operate a kill on that end-user device, it gives the ability to operate that kill switch. All of that could be achieved with Device Trust Manager. Document Trust Manager, that's another module that allows you to do apply digital signatures and authenticity to documents. And then finally, we have our product, which is Ultra DNS. And this is a recent acquisition for DigiCert. And Ultra DNS is the world's leading authoritative DNS solution. So why are we talking about that here? Well, if we go back to the announcement by the CA Browser Forum, it's an interesting one, because not only does it tell us that the maximum lifespan of certificates will come down to 47 days, it also says that domain validation will come down to 10 days, which will mean that you will have to revalidate domains on an incredibly regular basis. Our Ultra DNS solution allows you to integrate that with our certificate lifecycle solution to manage both issues. You can automate the registration of the domain and the checking of the domain along with the certificate as well. And as I say, all of that solution is all done under a single platform, single pane of glass, all fully integrated. So, as we come down to the last 10 seconds, we're going to be able to bang on. If you decide to work with DigiCert, you're in great company. because we have 90% of the Fortune 500 companies using our solutions. Some of these names here are just a small selection of them, but we're able to operate all around the world with companies big and small. So, that's my time. That was a really quick presentation. I know I spoke a lot there. So, we do have a stand here, so if you have any questions, you'd like to talk about some of these in a little bit more detail, please do feel free to come up, speak to myself, speak to one of my team who are much smarter than me and can do this stuff much better than me, and we'd be delighted to speak with you in more detail. Thank you for your time, and enjoy the rest of the day.